Welcome to Tribe Talks with ArcherPoint Retail. Today, our retail experts, Kayla Magnan and Thomas Nielsen, will be discussing the payment option that many consumers want and expect from retailers, contactless payments. So let's go ahead and get started. Over to you, Kayla.
Thank you, Suzanne. Here we are again, everyone. Hello, and as mentioned in this title, like with the last contactless, all of our sessions seem to have present a contactless theme. For example, our first sessions, which weren't necessarily titled contactless on loyalty and e-commerce, but both highlighted contactless shopping. And when researching these topics over these past months, I truly believe that these actually lead back to customer experience as the overall common subject. And I would just actually say contactless shopping is more of the current trend. So joining us again, Thomas, what's your feedback on that? Do you think customer experience is the real driver to our contactless shopping trend?
Well, hello, everyone. Again, let me start out by saying thank you to you, Kayla, and to Zane for having me. And yes, exactly. The customer experience should be the underlying theme here. As we mentioned in our other sessions, the experience that the customers have, whether it's an in-store or online or through loyalty programs, it's an experience that's going to influence both their immediate and their future shopping behaviors.
And so would you say that external factors, especially considering the current times, that these external factors are the drivers to these trends that retailers provide new experience journeys to?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, Kayla. So if we step back and just look at the year 2020 so far, globally, we have had many crises which have changed people's life and behavior, some of them which we might already have forgotten. If I've mentioned the Australian bushfires, the Hong Kong protests, COVID, and of late, the George Floyd protests, just to name a few. They are all good examples of local and regional and global crises which have had an impact on a personal level and changed people's buying behavior. We know that these type of crises will occur again, but they are hard to predict, and they're hard to predict when and what form they will take. So all our retailers can do to prepare for the next crisis is to organize their businesses for maximum flexibility. It's important for the retailers to be nimble and able to quickly adapt to whatever the next crisis may bring. And can I remind our retailers on the call that your reputation is your currency in a crisis. So going back and looking at the current crisis caused by the COVID pandemic and how it has brought a new trend in shopping, meaning a focus on contactless payment, you will note that the same crisis has also brought about trends that's not unique to a pandemic, such as panic buying, overbuying, emotional buying, which we see in many other crises, whether or economy related.
So does the trend following the crisis actually create a new experience, or is it just adding other options like with payments or contactless payments? Is this truly a trend into a new experience or simply just another option to pay?
Well, if we cover the payment side first, that really depends on when and where you are when you make the payment. If we go a little bit back, in 2016, in 2/3 of the POS card transaction payments were contactless in Australia. In 2018, if we exclude the US just for a moment, more than 40% of in-store Visa transactions reported by a tap to pay option. And last year, China reported 80% of consumers pay using some mobile pay option. Now back in the US again, this past March, Visa reported 31 million Americans use a contactless card. This is up 150% from March 2019. So while many countries have been quickly adapting to these contactless payment options, the US joined the trend a little late and after following this crisis. And as the experience with contactless payment gets even faster, even safer, and even more personalized, we'll see many consumers demanding the retailers to provide this option to pay everywhere.
Now, you just mentioned faster, safer, and more personalized, and that's really interesting to me in regards to payments. I'm hoping we can break these down further, maybe starting with safer, because how can just loosely waving my device or card in front of another device be safer than actually inserting a card into the device requesting for payment?
Yeah, Caleb, these are indeed the conveniences with a card and cash alternative payment options. And I can definitely understand the concern around security. However, many experts state that the tap to pay options are actually more secure than the chip and pin, which or dip cards that we referred to. Tap to pay options are similar to a chip card from a safety perspective. Insofar, both of them don't transmit the name, the card number, or the 3-digit security code, what we refer to as the CVV. Instead of relying on a chip and one-time security code, tap to pay options uses a unique tokenized ID to mask the credit card and related sensitive information. Only when you tap the card or unlock your phone and then place either the card or the phone within inches of the payment device, the reader will then initiate the communication. And from there, within less than 2 seconds, a short-range wireless communication called NFC, also known as near-field communication, will be able to register the authorization for payment. And so go back and cover and discuss and cover your concerns around the lost cards and lost phones with your mobile wallet activated. Many financial service providers today have the ability to freeze and lock and even wipe out your account remotely.
Okay, that's just as secure as the chip types, and a login definitely makes sense. I mean, even my smartwatch has features in case my watch is lost or stolen, I can wipe out the account. But you mentioned 2-second payment time. How does that actually differ from a quick swipe or the chip and pin process? Those, I mean, to me seem around 2 seconds, but maybe I'm just not realizing that delay.
Well, exactly. Tap to pay options are actually less than 2 seconds, Kayla. And chip to pin can take up to 30 seconds. I would like to ask you if you just pause here for a quick exercise. Right here, I just paused 2 seconds after my first sentence, and now just 15 seconds right now, where if you are using an EMV readers, can take up twice as long. So now think about all those time differences. What does that mean for retailers in a high volume transactions? Think about high traffic businesses like grocery stores, food trucks, or even museums. Or even better, think about busy times of a day like a morning rush, lunch, happy hour, or holiday sales. Transaction speed will be all the more important for businesses faced with capacity limitations post the COVID pandemic, who will likely be focused on customers' turnover like restaurants, Disney, amusement parks, and so forth. So for example, let's take my favorite little local coffee shop here in Soho during the morning rush. There's a line of 10, 15 people inside and outside, but at least the last 3 times I've been there, most of the customers have paid with the tap to go, and you were in and out in what felt like no time. So when you walk by or running late for work and you see there's a line, you're still most likely to stop by because you have experienced a high transaction speed.
Wow, okay, I really appreciate that exercise, Thomas. It definitely helps remind me on the difference between seconds, because when I'm out shopping, I'm typically only paying attention to how long I stood in line before I got to my transaction and not how long my payment process takes. But I do admit on the payment process, when I am in line and I see someone fiddling with their wallet, counting cash, or the card reader isn't accepting that insert, whatever it is that delays the process, a small sigh of impatience begins to develop. And if I'm not the next in line, I silently speak to myself, I hope the next transaction goes smooth. But knowing that I can use a quicker and safer option to pay on my part, I'm definitely going to begin exploring these options. But it is convenient. I can upload cards to a mobile wallet and still use the tap to pay options, because I looked at my credit cards and they don't have that capability yet, but I can use a mobile wallet instead. And personally, to me, that seems more secure, because how often do I actually lose this device that's glued to my side? And I can't even remember the last time I claimed my phone lost or stolen. And just that extra layer of having to unlock my phone to initiate that payment is a method that I like.
Yeah, and while I like the tap to pay feature as well, we have to remember there are many options or payment options for every preference. And as we're seeing in this current pandemic, many businesses are making it very clear that they prefer contactless payment over taking the risk of virus transmissions through contact between the staff and the customers. And again, here we have another area where we can get creative. But creative payment options have been explored for quite some time, like in entertainment venues like Disney or cruise ships or other amusement parks have been using these RFID wristbands, which can be linked to a debit card, credit card, or some other payment account that the attendees wear as their entry pass, but also can use for making payments for items, concession, extra ticketing as they explore the venue. And some numbers back from 2016 actually states that the wristbands transaction have increased event revenue by 20%.
And now that you mention it, I do actually recall a few years ago, I was out with my nephews to one of our local entertainment spots with mini golf, laser tag, go-karts, and arcade games. And we were paying for our activities and they were given wristbands. I just thought it was related to our package. We did all day passes, but these wristbands would allow for the access to the areas we just prepaid. Now, when I was a kid, it was paper tickets that needed to be verified for access. But besides that ticket exchange, almost everything else was the exact same process. You'd line up for the activity, and then you'd verify your ability to participate. And instead of handing the staff member a ticket, there'd be a device you just scan your wristband on that would then allow or deny the access based on the data in the wristband. So for example, if we purchased 2 rounds of laser tag and they tried for a third attempt, it would alert the staff on that third attempt. And that was years ago, where I'd say it was even on a basic or simplistic level with pre-purchased, preloaded wristbands. It's exciting to learn what creative things have developed since then, not even considering the results we're going to see from this pandemic shift.
And that's exactly the creativity we should be thinking of. A convenient way for our customers to be able to quickly and safely pay for anything they want. And there's so many options or creative ways to use these wristbands or enhance experience or increase the revenue. There's many music events, festivals, city transportation, or some museums that already transitioned to this type of process. What does that mean? Well, you purchase the ticket online or at the door, you receive these wristbands, you can link to your credit card, or even better, you can link to a credit card that you have already on file with the retailer. Then you freely navigate the event, being able to charge any additional items using this wristband. So no carrying cash, no carrying credit cards or debit cards, and no form for payment. No need to bring anything, especially if you purchase the ticket online and you have linked your account beforehand.
This definitely has me thinking creatively with the use of smartwatches, mobile devices, wristbands, and loyalty packages. But let's start putting this into some actions. How does a retailer get started with contactless payment options? What should we be thinking about in the payment experience? And are there any external applications or hardware pieces we may need to consider?
Absolutely. And as with any business decision, the requirements and benefits related to any new feature should be carefully analyzed. Firstly, always start with your goals. What do you want to accomplish with this new feature, with this new offering? Then evaluate what your current environment or equipment landscape is. Many retailers had a recent conversion to the EMV-enabled devices, of which millions of them are already set up to accept contactless payments. This means no additional fees, no additional hardware, and no need to trade in new for newer versions. But you need to understand if your system needs or has been already or needs to be upgraded to utilize this tap to go payments. You can reach out to your local support partner or your internal IT team if you have one. Retailers should also consider limitations. Are there processes that require additional interactions, such as verification of ID, PIN, etc.? But these could also be verification that the customers needs to complete to finalize the transaction on the device, such as the fingerprint, or we need to have a PIN on the credit card terminal. And always, and lastly, remember your staff training. This is a new payment method they will be receiving and processing. Have a basic troubleshooting guideline procedures, like how to restart the hardware devices, or a commonly known error list to help the staff finalize the transaction. The staff member is on the front line, so make sure they understand the process procedures and have quick fix resolutions.
Sounds like it's pretty much just as easy to start contactless payments as it is to start any other offering, but there's a key to remember. Start simple, outline a goal and your current layout, whether that's the infrastructure, software, hardware, internal or external processes, but with that definitely comes the staff. Then from there, any retailer could start any offering to adapt to whatever trend is picking up. And While I don't have a whole lot of experience using contactless payments as a consumer, I have begun to explore Google Wallet features. And since I did travel recently this past week, I did want to share kind of my experience with this. I did add that mobile wallet to my phone and began exploring this type of payment method, and I am pretty shocked actually. So firstly, when setting it up, it asked if I wanted to connect to my email. And when I did, it immediately recognized all my loyalty accounts, auto-generating them into the wallet, giving me the same benefits from my loyalty program, just as if I were paying with cash or with a physical card. I was given a few errors when trying to directly upload my cards, but I had the option to link to my PayPal account. So I did that very, very simply. So when I was actually at the airport and using it, it definitely was around 2 seconds, maybe less. I didn't have a stopwatch, but I was trying to recognize the trigger and time it. And the customer before me actually had also paid with their Apple Watch. And again, it was just as quick to watch her transaction as it was to go through mine. So while I'm really interested in hearing any other experiences, whether that's you as a retailer or you as a consumer, feel free to raise your hand. But first, I'm going to send it back over to Suzanne. Maybe we have some questions to answer before we get to those hand raisers, or we can dive right into those questions or to those experiences.
Yeah, once again, use your GoToWebinar console to raise your hand or ask any questions. And thank you guys for this conversation. I too am experimenting with tap to pay with my new smartwatch. So I think we're all making that transition if we hadn't already. We do have a few questions that have come in. Our first one is, can I add a contactless payment option if I don't have EMV enabled devices?
Well, I think, Thomas, let me take this real
Yep.
quick, but I think that really is going to depend on the hardware, really. As Thomas mentioned, millions of devices are already equipped, and I believe, honestly, every credit card terminal is supposed to require to be EMV enabled, or there's going to be a hefty fee that goes with it. So I think I'd first ask why you'd want to go contactless without going EMV enabled first. But again, it's just really going to depend on the hardware, though. If you have recently converted to those EMV enabled devices, you could possibly already be ready. So just look for almost what a sound symbol looks like on the front. Some of the sleeker devices may not have that, but they can still accept the tap and go options. But definitely just look and see if there's that symbol that indicates it's tap to go ready.
Great, thank you, Kayla. Another question that came in is, what is the cost to add contactless payments?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it really depends, doesn't it? What environment are you in? But the main focus here should really be the hardware, as Kayla just mentioned. Your current hardware, that is it EMV and contactless enabled. If it's not, then I have seen different pieces of hardware out there in Geneco and Verifone hardware starting from around $300, and that will allow you to be contactless and EMV. But don't forget, your POS solution should also have that ability to obviously take that as well. But the main focus around here is really the hardware.
All right, thank you, Thomas. And another question that came in, can I add all contactless payment options, including NFC and e-wallets at the same time?
Again, that's really going to depend on the hardware and what options they're accepting. So yeah, really dive into, what hardware you have and what options they allow for you to have, and maybe even what they're adding to their offerings, because they are getting into all of these different payment options because all consumers have different types of payment preferences.
Exactly.
All right, another question that came in for you, Thomas. Do you see a higher investment coming from financial institutions to move to tap to pay functionality?
From a financial institution standpoint, I'm not sure I understand that question. Is that bigger push coming from that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the financial institutions are in the forefront here, pushing this out to the retailers. But there is an interest in the general industry, in the retail and hospitality, to go contactless, given the current environment we're in. But the financial institution has been very pushy and very good at getting this out to market.
Thank you. Hopefully that answers your question there. And then the next question, beyond the hardware, what about the software and integration with the payment processor? do certain integrations have different abilities or requirements than others? For example, customers using Apple Pay are being required to provide a signature in their particular environment.
Well, there's a lot of questions there in one, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was
So,
several. So if you want, we can break it down.
yeah. So on the
So,
software side, really depends. Again, it's all surrounded around your hardware. Does your current solution support an EMV and contactless piece of hardware? If not, then you need to look at the hardware. If it does, there's no cost associated really with it. There might be some things you have to contact your merchant processor about if they need to set up a few things on the backside, but that should be the only cost you have associated with that.
and then do certain integrations have different abilities or requirements than others, like with an additional signature being required with Apple Pay? Have you had experience with that?
I have not had that down in the local supermarket where I actually pay both on my watch and on my phone, and I do not have to sign. So again, that will be a configuration within your merchant and in your software.
All right. Any other? I think those are all the questions that we have at the moment. So with that, I'm going to pause our recording. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Thank you, Thomas and Kayla, for your time and sharing that with us today.
Thanks for watching this ArcherPoint video. If you found it helpful, make sure to check out our website and blog at www.archerpoint.com. Additionally, if you have any questions regarding our products, services, or information in this video, feel free to email us at info@archerpoint.com. Thanks.